Taemin couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the two little girls in the cage. Their frightened faces haunted him. He paced around his tiny apartment on the station, his mind racing with thoughts he couldn't stop. 50,000 credits. That was everything he had left. His emergency fund, the money his mother had saved for her medical treatments, even the final payment he owed on the Arirang. It wasn't enough. He knew it wasn't enough. These kinds of auctions dealt in hundreds of thousands of credits. But he couldn't just do nothing. When morning came, Taemin went to find Jin Woo at the security office. She was drinking coffee and reading reports on her computer screen. Dark circles under her eyes showed she hadn't slept much either. "You look worse than yesterday," she said without looking up. "I need to know more about the auction," Taemin said. Jin Woo finally looked at him. "I was afraid you'd say that." "Sit down." Taemin sat in the chair across from her desk. The security office was small and cramped, with wanted posters covering the walls. Half of them showed human faces. The other half showed aliens he couldn't identify. "Those two children you saw," Jin Woo began. "They're Lyrians. Their world was destroyed 6 months ago. The hegemony used planet-killer weapons on it, turned the whole surface into glass. Why would they do that? Because the Lyrians wouldn't surrender. They're empaths. They can feel other people's emotions. The hegemony wanted to use them as living weapons to break the will of their enemies. The Lyrians refused." Taemin felt anger building in his chest. "So the hegemony killed them all?" "Almost all. A few ships escaped before the end. But most of those were caught by pirates or slavers." Jin Woo pulled up a file on her computer. According to intelligence reports, those two girls might be the last of their species. The last of their species. Taemin stared at the wall, trying to process what that meant. Somewhere in space, two scared children carried the entire history and culture of their people. And tonight they would be sold to the highest bidder. "Who's running the auction?" he asked. "Vrex the Cruel. He's a Cathari crime boss who controls most of the black market trade in this sector. Very dangerous, very smart, and completely without morals." "And the buyers?" Jin Woo hesitated. "That's the part you really don't want to hear. The biggest bidder is probably going to be Keth Bloodclaw." Taemin had heard that name before. Everyone in space had heard of Keth Bloodclaw. He was a Droger warlord who collected rare beings like trophies. Stories said he kept dozens of sentient creatures in cages on his ship, torturing them for entertainment. "He collects empaths especially," Jin Woo continued. "He likes to break their spirits, make them feel his victims' pain and fear. That's sick. That's why I told you to stay away from this." Jin Woo leaned forward. "Taemin, I know what you're thinking, but you can't save them. You don't have enough money, and even if you did, crossing people like Vrex and Keth would be suicide. There has to be something I can do." "There isn't, I'm sorry. But that's the truth." Taemin left the security office feeling worse than before. He walked through the station's corridors without really seeing where he was going. His feet carried him to the merchant district, where humans had set up small shops and restaurants that reminded them of home. He found himself at Haiwan's bar. Even though it was barely noon and the place was almost empty, Haiwan was cleaning glasses behind the counter. "You look like someone died," she said when she saw him. Taemin told her about the auction and the two Lyrian sisters. Haiwan listened without interrupting, her expression growing more troubled with each detail. "Empaths," she said when he finished. "I've heard of them. They feel everything you feel, but stronger. A child like that in a place like this?" She shook her head. "It's not right. But there's nothing I can do about it. Maybe not alone." Haiwan set down the glass she was cleaning. "Wait here." She disappeared into the back room. Taemin heard her making calls, speaking quickly in Korean to people he couldn't identify. After 20 minutes, she came back. "I called everyone I know. Other business owners, ship crews, mechanics. Anyone with a human heart and a few credits to spare? Haiwan, you don't understand. This will cost hundreds of thousands of credits. So we make hundreds of thousands of credits." She pulled out a data pad and showed him numbers. Dong Hyun at the repair shop pledged 5,000. So Young from the medical center gave 3,000. Captain Yeon Seo from the Soul Runner promised 10,000 from her crew's bonus fund. Taemin stared at the list of names and amounts. Humans he barely knew were offering money they probably couldn't afford to lose. Why would they do this? Because they're human, and humans don't leave children in cages. But even with all the donations, the total was only 80,000 credits. It was generous beyond words, but Taemin knew it wouldn't be enough. That afternoon, he met with So-Young Nam at the medical center. She was a small woman with kind eyes who had treated half the humans on the station at one time or another. "I've been thinking about what you told Heywan," she said, "about the Lyrian children. Everyone's been very generous, but I don't think we have enough money. Maybe money isn't the only way." So-Young pulled up some legal documents on her computer. "I've been researching galactic auction law. There's something called the right of service substitution." "What's that?" "It's old law from before the modern banking system. If someone can't afford to buy something at auction, they can offer equivalent service instead." Taemin felt a spark of hope. Service? Work? Labor. Basically, you become an indentured servant to pay off the debt. So-Young's expression was serious. "It's dangerous, Taemin. People who invoke this right usually end up working for criminals. Many don't survive their service periods. How long would the service period be? That depends on what you're bidding against. If the final bid is 300,000 credits and the auction house values your services at 15,000 credits per year, you'd owe 20 years of work. 20 years. Taemin would be 54 when it ended. If he survived that long, there's more, So-Young said. You wouldn't just be offering your own service. You'd have to offer your ship, your routes, everything you own. And even then, it might not be enough." That evening, Taemin stood on the observation deck of the station looking out at the stars. The trade world below was a blue and green marble, beautiful and peaceful from this distance. But he knew that down on the surface and on stations like this one, terrible things happened every day. He thought about his father, who had always said that a person's worth wasn't measured in credits, but in the choices they made when no one was watching. He thought about his mother, who would understand why he had to do this, even if it meant losing everything. He thought about two little girls who had already lost everything, and who would lose even more if someone didn't act. The auction would begin in 6 hours. Taemin went back to his apartment and put on his best clothes. They weren't much, just a clean shirt and pants that didn't have stains from engine oil. He checked his account balance one more time. 50,000 credits from his own money, plus 30,000 from the other humans on the station. It wasn't enough to buy freedom for 2 children. But maybe, just maybe, it was enough to buy them a chance. He picked up his datapad and sent a message to Jin Woo. "I'm going to need that legal documentation about the right of service substitution. And I'm going to need a friend in the room when I invoke it." The reply came back immediately. "You're insane, but I'll be there." Taemin smiled for the first time in days. Tomorrow he would either save 2 children or lose everything trying, but at least he would know he had tried. Taemin Park sat in the corner of the dirty bar staring at his empty glass. The lights above flickered and buzzed like dying insects. Around him, aliens from a dozen different worlds talked, laughed, and made deals. But Taemin heard none of it. His mind was stuck on one terrible number. 3. 3 missed payments on his cargo ship. 3 more days before the bank took everything he owned. 3 years since his father died and left him the freight business that was now falling apart. The Arirang was a good ship. Old but reliable. Taemin had grown up on that ship, learning to fix engines and plot courses through hyperspace. His father had saved for 20 years to buy it. Now it would be gone, sold to pay debts that kept growing no matter how hard Taemin worked. He pushed the glass away and rubbed his tired eyes. When was the last time he had slept more than 4 hours? When was the last time he had eaten something that wasn't from a vending machine? He couldn't remember. The space station New Busan never slept. It spun slowly in orbit around the trade world below, full of merchants, travelers, and people who lived in the spaces between worlds. Taemin had called it home for most of his adult life. Soon he would have no choice but to leave. "Another drink?" asked Heywan Lee, the bar owner. She was one of the few other humans on the station. Her voice was kind, but Taemin could see the worry in her eyes. "No money left," Taemin said. His voice came out rough and tired. Heywan poured him a glass of water instead. "Things will get better," she said softly. Taemin wanted to believe her. But the universe didn't seem to care about hope. The big shipping companies had all the best contracts. They could afford to lose money for months just to push out small operators like him. The war in the outer systems made everything dangerous and expensive. Insurance costs kept going up. Fuel prices never went down. At the table next to him, 2 large aliens were talking in low voices. They looked like walking lizards with too many teeth. Taemin recognized them as Vorthok traders. They usually dealt in legal goods, but everyone knew they would ship anything if the price was right. The auction is tomorrow night, one of them said in heavily accented Galactic Standard. Sector 7, level basement. Very special items this time. What kind of special? The other asked. The kind that makes you very rich, but also very careful. This is not for everyone to know. The first Vorthak looked around the bar nervously. I heard they have things from the burned worlds. Rare things. Living things. Taemin's stomach turned cold. The burned worlds were the planets the hegemony had destroyed in their expansion wars. Billions of people had died. Entire species had been wiped out. And now someone was selling what remained? The Vorthak finished their drinks and left. Taemin sat there for a long moment thinking. He shouldn't care about some black market auction. He had his own problems, but something inside him couldn't let it go. Maybe it was the way his father had raised him. Maybe it was just human curiosity. Or maybe he was desperate enough to consider anything. He followed the Vorthak traders out of the bar. The lower levels of New Busan were different from the clean, bright commercial areas above. Here the lights were dimmer and the air smelled of oil and unwashed bodies. This was where people came when they didn't want to be found. Where deals were made that couldn't happen in the light. Taemin kept his distance as he followed the two aliens through narrow corridors and down rusty stairs. His heart hammered in his chest. He had never done anything like this before. He was a cargo hauler, not a spy. The Vorthak stopped at a heavy metal door guarded by two armed humans. After a brief conversation and the exchange of credits, they were led inside. Taemin waited in the shadows, unsure what to do next. You lost? Asked a voice behind him. Taemin spun around to find a tall human woman with short black hair and scars on her arms. She wore the uniform of station security, but she was off duty. Jinwoo Kim, Taemin said, recognizing his old friend from their military days. What are you doing down here? My job, Jinwoo replied. Sometimes that means knowing about places I'm supposed to pretend don't exist. The real question is what you're doing here, Park. Taemin hesitated. He and Jinwoo had served together on a patrol ship during the border conflicts. They had saved each other's lives more than once, but that was years ago. I heard about an auction, Taemin said finally. Jinwoo's expression darkened. That's not an auction, friend. That's a slave market, and it's not something you want to get involved with. I'm not looking to buy anything. I'm just curious. Curiosity kills more than cats out here. Jinwoo studied his face. You look terrible. When did you last eat? I can't remember. Jinwoo sighed and pulled a protein bar from her jacket. Eat this. And listen to me carefully. That auction happens every few months. Rich aliens come to buy things that should never be sold. People. Sentient beings. Usually from worlds the hegemony has conquered or destroyed. Taemin felt sick. And you just let it happen? I'm one security officer on a station with 1 million residents and visitors. I report what I can to Earth Defense Force, but they're fighting a war. They can't save everyone. The protein bar tasted like cardboard, but it was food. Taemin ate it slowly, thinking about what Jinwoo had said. What kind of people get sold? Survivors. Refugees who got captured by pirates or slavers. Sometimes whole families. Jinwoo's voice was quiet now. Sometimes children. The word hit Taemin like a punch to the stomach. Children. He thought of his own childhood on the Arirang, safe and loved despite the dangers of space. He thought of his father teaching him to read star charts and fix hyperdrives. I have to see, he said. Taemin, no. Those people in there are dangerous. They won't hesitate to kill you if they think you're a threat. I won't cause trouble. I just need to see what's happening. Jinwoo stared at him for a long moment. Finally, she shook her head. You always were too stubborn for your own good. There's a service entrance around the back. The guards there owe me favors. But if you get yourself killed, I'm not explaining it to your mother. 20 minutes later, Taemin was inside the auction house, pressed against the back wall in the shadows. The room was full of aliens he didn't recognize. Rich ones, judging by their clothes and jewelry. At the front, a thin alien with purple skin was talking about the evening's merchandise. Then Taemin saw them. 2 small figures in a cage at the side of the room. They had pale, almost translucent skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Their eyes were large and dark, full of fear and sadness that made Taemin's chest ache. The older one couldn't be more than 7 years old. She held the younger one close, trying to shield her from the stares of the crowd. The little one looked barely old enough to walk. Sisters. They had to be sisters. And tomorrow, someone was going to buy them. The auction house was packed when Taemin arrived. He sat in the back row trying to make himself invisible among the crowd of wealthy aliens. His heart was beating so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. The room smelled of expensive perfumes and dangerous people. In the front rows, he could see beings from a dozen different worlds. Some he recognized from wanted posters in Jin Woo's office. Others looked rich enough to buy entire planets. Vrex the Cruel stood on the stage, his purple skin gleaming under the bright lights. He was tall and thin, with forearms that moved like snakes when he talked. His voice carried easily through the room. "Welcome, distinguished guests," Vrex said. "Tonight we offer treasures beyond imagination. Rare artifacts, exotic substances, and living specimens of extraordinary value." Taemin watched the other bidders. Near the front he spotted Keth Bloodclaw. The Drogar warlord was even more frightening in person than in the stories. He was huge, covered in dark scales, with claws that could tear through metal. Scars covered his face and arms. His eyes were the color of dried blood. "Our first lot," Vrex announced, "is a collection of Zephyrian crystal flowers. Bidding starts at 10,000 credits." The auction moved quickly through items that made Taemin sick to think about. Weapons designed to cause maximum pain. Drugs that could control minds. Art stolen from destroyed worlds. Each sale made the crowd more excited, more hungry for the next item. Then Vrex smiled, showing too many sharp teeth. "Now for something very special. Lot 23. A matched pair of Lyrian empaths. Female juveniles. Ages approximately 4 and 7 standard years." A cage was wheeled onto the stage. Inside were the two sisters Taemin had seen the night before. They held each other tightly, their pale skin glowing with fear. The older sister tried to shield the younger one from the stares of the crowd. "As you know," Vrex continued, "the Lyrian species is now effectively extinct. These specimens represent a unique opportunity for collectors, researchers, or entertainment purposes." Taemin felt rage building in his chest. Entertainment purposes. They were talking about children like they were toys. "The subjects display strong empathic abilities," Vrex said. "They can sense and project emotions across considerable distances. Very useful for psychological warfare or breaking the resistance of prisoners." In the crowd, Taemin could hear aliens discussing the sisters like they were discussing the weather. One talked about using them for experiments. Another wondered if their empathic abilities would work on different species. A third laughed about the fun he could have watching them suffer. "Bidding starts at 75,000 credits," Vrex announced. Hands shot up around the room. 80,000. 90,000. 100,000. The price climbed quickly. Taemin watched his small pile of credits become meaningless in seconds. By the time the bidding reached 200,000, only 5 bidders remained active. Keth Bloodclaw raised one clawed hand. 250,000. The room fell quiet. Most of the other bidders dropped out immediately. Only 2 remained, a wealthy collector from the core worlds and a representative from a syndicate research facility. 260,000, said the collector. 270,000, countered the syndicate representative. Keth growled low in his throat. 300,000. The other bidders went quiet. 300,000 credits was more than most people saw in a lifetime. On the stage, the two sisters clung to each other, their large eyes wide with terror. 300,000 credits, Vrex repeated. Going once. Taemin stood up. His legs felt weak, but his voice was steady. I invoke the right of service substitution. The entire auction house went silent. Every eye in the room turned to look at him. Vrex's forearms froze in mid-gesture. I'm sorry, Vrex said. The right of service substitution, Taemin repeated louder. Under Galactic Auction Law, Section 15, Subsection 7, I have the right to offer equivalent service in place of payment. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone in the front row said, Who is this human? From the side of the room, Jin Woo stepped forward. She wore her security uniform and carried a data pad. The claim is legally valid, she announced. I am here as official witness. Vrex's expression changed from confusion to anger. This is highly irregular. But legal, Jinwoo said firmly. The right of service substitution is old law, but it has never been repealed. Any sentient being can invoke it at a properly licensed auction. Keth Bloodclaw rose from his seat, towering over everyone around him. His voice was like grinding metal. I will not be denied by some pathetic human. Then increase your bid, Taemin said, his voice steadier than he felt. The Drogar warlord's eyes burned with rage. 400,000 credits. Taemin had expected this. He had spent hours calculating what he could offer. I counter with 20 years of personal service, plus my cargo ship Arirang, plus my established trade routes through neutral space, plus all remaining personal assets. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Jinwoo stepped forward with her datapad. According to standard valuation methods, the human's offer equals approximately 450,000 credits in total value. Vrex studied his own records. The ship is registered as Arirang, Corellian YT-2000 class. Trade routes include. He paused, his interest clearly growing. This includes the Kepler run and the Vega Centauri loop? Yes, Taemin said. Those were dangerous routes that he had spent years mapping. They cut through asteroid fields and unstable, hyperspace regions, but they could save weeks of travel time for the right cargo. And you personally guarantee 20 years of service? Yes. On the stage, the older sister was staring at him. Her large, dark eyes seemed to see right through him. For a moment, Taemin felt something strange in his mind. A gentle touch, like someone brushing against his thoughts. Then he felt what she was feeling. Desperate hope mixed with disbelief that a stranger would help them. Keth snarled and raised his bid again. 500,000 credits. The number hit the room like a physical blow. 500,000 credits was enough to buy a small warship. It was enough to live in luxury for several lifetimes. Taemin closed his eyes and thought of his father. He thought of every human child who had ever been safe and loved. He thought of what it meant to be human in a universe full of creatures who saw children as property. 25 years of service, he said, plus everything else I offered. The crowd was dead silent now. Even Vrex seemed stunned by the stakes of this bizarre bidding war. Keth's rage was so intense that nearby aliens moved away from him. 600,000 credits, he roared. Taemin felt the number like a punch to the stomach. There was no way he could match that, even with his entire life as collateral. Then he remembered something So Young had told him. The right of service substitution wasn't just about individual service. It was about providing value to the auction house. 30 years of personal service, Taemin said, plus my ship and routes. Plus I will serve as Vrex's exclusive courier for dangerous cargo throughout the neutral zone. Plus, he took a deep breath. Plus I guarantee the recruitment of other human couriers to work for your organization. This caused an uproar in the crowd. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as some of the best pilots and navigators. A network of human couriers would be incredibly valuable to a crime boss like Vrex. Vrex's forearms moved constantly as he calculated. His small eyes glittered with greed. The human's offer has merit, he said slowly. Exclusive human courier services for 30 years, plus established routes, plus recruitment guarantees. I will pay 700,000 credits, Keth said desperately, but Vrex was already shaking his head. The human's offer provides more long-term value. I accept the right of service substitution. Keth's roar of fury shook the room. Several aliens near him ran for the exits. This is not over, human, he snarled. But it was over. Taemin had won. As guards moved to escort him to complete the paperwork, Taemin looked at the cage on the stage. The older sister was still staring at him, tears running down her pale cheeks. But now she was smiling. He had given up everything. His freedom, his ship, his future. For 30 years he would be little more than a slave. But 2 children would live. 2 children would be safe. And somehow, that felt like the most important thing he had ever done. The Arirang felt different now that it wasn't really his anymore. Taemin sat in the pilot's seat, running through the pre-flight checklist for their first mission as Vrex's property. Behind him, in what used to be the cargo hold, he could hear the two Lyrian sisters moving around quietly. 3 days had passed since the auction. 3 days of paperwork, legal documents, and making arrangements for his new life as an indentured servant. The sisters, who he had learned were named Nari and Bomi, had not spoken to him yet. They barely made any sound at all. Heejin Park, the human xenobiologist on the station, had helped him prepare a living space for them. She had researched Lyrian dietary needs and cultural practices, providing food supplements and information about their sleep cycles. They're traumatized, Hyojin had explained. Empaths feel everything more intensely than other species. They've experienced the death of their entire world, been captured by slavers and sold at auction. It will take time for them to trust anyone. Taemin had converted the cargo hold into a living area with soft bedding, toys from the station's shops, and a small food preparation area. He had painted the walls with pictures of stars and peaceful landscapes, trying to make it feel less like a prison cell. But the sisters still huddled together in the corner, watching him with wide, fearful eyes. The communication system buzzed. Rex's voice filled the cockpit. "Courier Park, you have your first assignment." "I'm ready," Taemin replied, though he wasn't sure that was true. "You will transport a cargo container to the Epsilon sector. Outpost 7, the contents are sensitive. Do not open the container. Do not scan the container. Deliver it intact or face the consequences." Taemin looked at the coordinates Vrex had sent. The Epsilon sector was a war zone, full of pirates and hostile military forces. It was exactly the kind of dangerous run that usually paid triple rates. Now he was doing it for free. "What about the children?" he asked. "They are your responsibility now. Where you go, they go." The communication ended. Taemin stared at the coordinates for a long moment, then began plotting a course. At least it was work he knew how to do. As the Arirang left the station and jumped to hyperspace, Taemin tried to think of ways to communicate with Nari and Bomi. He had found basic Lyrian language files in the ship's computer, but they were incomplete. Most Lyrian cultural information had been lost when their world died. On the second day of the journey, he brought food to the cargo hold and found Bomi, the younger sister, crying silently. Her tears looked like small crystals, catching the light as they fell. Nari, the older sister, held her protectively and stared at Taemin with suspicious eyes. "It's okay," Taemin said softly in Galactic Standard. "I won't hurt you." Nari tilted her head, considering his words. Then in Broken Standard she said, "Why you help us?" It was the first time either of them had spoken to him. Taemin sat down slowly, keeping his distance so they wouldn't feel threatened. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said. "Right thing," Nari repeated, struggling with the words. "Yes, children should be safe. Children should be with family." "Family is dead," Nari said quietly. "Mama and Papa are dead." "Everyone is dead." Taemin felt his chest tighten. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that happened to you." Nari studied his face for a long moment. Then she said something in her own language to Bomi. The little girl looked at him with curiosity instead of pure fear. "She wants to know if you are family now." Nari translated. The question caught Taemin off guard. He thought about his own family, his parents who had loved him and kept him safe. He thought about what family really meant. "If you want me to be," he said finally. Nari translated for her sister. Bomi whispered something back. "She asks what we call you." Taemin smiled. "My name is Taemin, but in Korean, my language, you could call me Appa. It means big brother." "Appa," Bomi repeated carefully, testing the word. Something warm spread through Taemin's chest. "That's right." Over the following days, the sisters began to open up gradually. Taemin learned that Nari had protected Bomi during the destruction of their world, hiding in the ruins of their city until pirates found them. She had been the one to keep them both alive during months of captivity. Bomi was too young to fully understand what had happened, but her empathic abilities were strong. She could sense Taemin's emotions and seemed to know that he genuinely cared about them. "Empaths don't just feel emotions," Nari explained one day as they ate together. "We can share them too. Mama used to share happy feelings when I was sad. Can you share feelings with me?" Taemin asked. Nari looked uncertain. "You are not Lyrian, but maybe." She reached out and gently touched his hand. Suddenly Taemin was flooded with sensations that weren't his own. He felt Nari's deep sadness and loss, but also her growing hope and trust. He felt Bomi's confusion and fear, but also the innocent love that children give so freely. And through their connection, they felt something from him that made both sisters gasp in wonder. They felt his determination to protect them, his willingness to sacrifice everything for their safety, and the pure human stubborn refusal to give up when someone needed help. "You feel different from other people," Nari said in amazement. "Your feelings are strong, but good strong." "That's just how humans are," Taemin said. "We're stubborn." Nari laughed for the first time since he had known her. The sound was like music. The journey to Epsilon Sector took 2 weeks through dangerous hyperspace routes. Along the way, Taemin taught the sisters basic ship operations and navigation. They were quick learners, especially Nari, who seemed to have an intuitive understanding of hyperspace mechanics. "Lyrians are natural navigators," she explained. "We can feel the currents in space like fish feel water currents." "That could be very useful," Taemin said, thinking of all the dangerous routes he had to fly for Vrex. When they finally reached Outpost 7, Taemin realized why Vrex had sent them here. The outpost was controlled by pirates who were known to kill couriers after taking their cargo. It was meant to be a death sentence, but as they approached the docking bay, Nari suddenly gripped his arm. "There is danger here. I can feel it. Anger and greed and hunger for violence. You know how many people?" Taemin asked. Nari closed her eyes and concentrated. "6 in the docking bay. More in the station. They plan to kill us and take the ship." Taemin had dealt with pirates before, but never with 2 children to protect. He thought quickly, then had an idea. "Can you project emotions the way you share them?" he asked. "Yes, but it is hard. And dangerous. If I project too much fear or anger, it can hurt people's minds." "What about confusion? Or sleepiness?" Nari's eyes widened with understanding. "I can try." As they docked at the outpost, Nari concentrated intensely. She projected waves of confusion and fatigue toward the pirates waiting for them. Within minutes, the docking bay crew was stumbling around, unable to focus on their plan to ambush the cargo ship. Taemin quickly completed the delivery and got them back to space before anyone figured out what had happened. "That was amazing," he told the sisters as they jumped back to hyperspace. "We make a good team," Nari said with a smile. "Yes," Bomi agreed, speaking in standard for the first time. "We are family now." Taemin felt something he hadn't experienced since his father died. He felt like he belonged somewhere, like he had people who needed him and whom he needed in return. They still had 29 years and 11 months of service ahead of them. The work would be dangerous, and Vrex would probably keep trying to get them killed. But they weren't alone anymore, they had each other. And sometimes that was enough to face anything. 6 months had passed since the auction, and Taemin was starting to understand that Vrex had never intended for them to survive this long. Each mission was more dangerous than the last. Pirates, war zones, unstable systems where ships disappeared without a trace. But they had survived everything, working together as a team. Nari's empathic abilities could detect danger from great distances, while Bomi's innocent trust somehow made even the most hardened criminals hesitate to harm them. And Taemin's stubborn refusal to give up had carried them through impossible situations. The sisters had changed too. They laughed now, played games, and called him Appa without fear. The Arirang had become their home, and they had become his family in every way that mattered. Then Vrex called with their final mission. "You will transport this data core to the Hegemony fleet at Proxima Station," Vrex told them over the communication system. His voice carried a satisfaction that made Taemin nervous. "The Hegemony?" Taemin asked. "I thought you were neutral in the war." "Business is business, human. The Hegemony pays well for certain types of information." When the data core was loaded onto their ship, Taemin felt sick. It was encrypted, but he recognized the format. These were navigation charts, trade routes, and shipping schedules for human merchant vessels throughout neutral space. Information that would let the Hegemony ambush civilian ships. "He's been using us," Taemin told the sisters that night. "Every route we've flown, every cargo we've delivered, he's been mapping our movements, building a database of human shipping patterns." Nari's eyes were wide with fear. "The Hegemony will hurt other humans?" "Yes, thousands of them. Maybe millions. We have to stop this," Nari said firmly. "I don't know how. We're just one small cargo ship. And if we betray Vrex, he'll hunt us down and kill us." But even as he spoke, Taemin was thinking. Vrex's plan was clever, but it had one weakness. He had assumed that Taemin would follow orders blindly, like a good slave. He hadn't counted on the sisters' abilities. "Can you project emotions across long distances?" Taemin asked Nari. "Yes, but it's very hard, and it hurts." "What about across hyperspace?" I don't know. Maybe if Bomi helps me." Taemin explained his plan. It was dangerous and probably impossible, but it was the only chance they had. Instead of flying to Proxima Station, they changed course for the outer rim of the system. There, hidden behind a moon, Taemin activated their ship's emergency beacon while the sisters concentrated together. Nari and Bomi joined their minds, combining their empathic abilities in a way Taemin had never seen before. Their pale skin glowed brighter as they projected a massive wave of distress and fear across hyperspace. The projection carried a simple message, repeated over and over: danger, betrayal, help needed. Children in trouble. For 3 hours they maintained the projection. Both sisters collapsed from exhaustion, but they had done something unprecedented. Their empathic cry for help had reached every human within 3 light years. The first ship to respond was the Earth Defense Force battlecruiser Soul's Pride, commanded by Captain Yeonseo Lim. Her patrol had been investigating reports of increased hegemony activity in the sector. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Lim of the EDF Soul's Pride," came the communication. "We received your distress signal. What is your situation?" Taemin explained everything: the auction, his indentured servitude to Vrex, and the data they were supposed to deliver to the hegemony. He transmitted copies of the shipping data, proving what the crime boss had been planning. "That information could have gotten thousands of our people killed," Captain Lim said grimly. "You did the right thing by calling for help. But help came with a price." Within hours, Rex's ships arrived in the system, followed by a hegemony battle group led by Keth Bloodclaw himself. The Drogar warlord had made a deal with Vrex and the hegemony. He would get the sisters for his collection, the hegemony would get the trade data, and Vrex would be paid triple. "Human vessel," Keth's voice growled across the communication channel. "Surrender the Lyrian specimens and prepare to be boarded." "No," Taemin said simply. What followed was a battle unlike anything in recorded history. The Soul's Pride was outnumbered 3-1, but Captain Lim refused to abandon a human family in danger. More EDF ships arrived as word spread through hyperspace, drawn by the sisters' ongoing empathic broadcasts. In the middle of the battle, something extraordinary happened. Nari and Bomi, working together despite their exhaustion, projected the memories of their world's destruction directly into the minds of every hegemony soldier in the fleet. Suddenly, the enemy crews experienced the terror and anguish of watching their homeworld burn. They felt the desperation of parents trying to protect their children. They felt the absolute horror of genocide. The hegemony ships began to falter as their crews became overwhelmed by emotions they had never imagined. Some ships simply stopped fighting. Others turned their weapons on their own command vessels, unable to serve leaders who could cause such suffering. Keth Bloodclaw's flagship tried to ram the Ararang in a final act of rage, but the Drogar warlord had underestimated human determination. The Soul's Pride intercepted the attack, sacrificing itself to protect a single cargo ship carrying 2 alien children and their human guardian. In the end, the hegemony fleet retreated, their crews broken by the empathic assault. Vrex was dead, killed when his space station's reactor overloaded during the battle, and Keth Bloodclaw was captured alive, though he spent the rest of his life in a psychiatric facility, unable to forget the emotions the sisters had forced him to feel. The aftermath brought unexpected changes. The Earth Defense Force offered to relocate Nari and Bomi to a safe colony world, with full citizenship and protection. But when asked what they wanted, both sisters gave the same answer. "We want to stay with Appa," Nari said firmly. "He is our family," Bomi added. "Families stay together." Using salvage rights from the battle and a substantial reward from the EDF, Taemin was able to rebuild his shipping business. But this time it was different. His cargo company became known throughout human space as the most trustworthy in neutral territory. The sisters grew up learning both human and Lyrian traditions. Nari became an expert navigator, whose empathic abilities could guide ships safely through the most dangerous regions of space. Bomi became a gifted engineer whose emotional sensitivity helped her understand how machines worked. Years later, when Nari was grown and had a daughter of her own, she would tell the child the story of the human who gave up everything to keep two scared little girls together. "Your grandfather wasn't really our grandfather by blood," she would say, "but he became our family by choice, and that's the strongest kind of family there is." The story spread throughout human space and beyond. It became a legend told in bars and shipping offices, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories weren't won with weapons or technology, but with simple human kindness. In the end, Taman never served his 30 years of indentured servitude. Instead, he spent 30 years as a father, watching two alien children grow into strong, confident adults who carried the best of both human and Lyrian culture. And when other species asked what made humans so different from the rest of the galaxy, they would tell this story. About a struggling cargo hauler who chose to sacrifice everything rather than let two children suffer alone. It wasn't about being the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. It was about the stubborn human refusal to accept that some things couldn't be changed, that some people couldn't be helped, that some children couldn't be saved. It was about the simple belief that every life mattered, regardless of species or circumstance. It was about what it truly meant to be human in a universe that sometimes forgot the value of compassion. And in a galaxy full of wonders and terrors, that was perhaps the most powerful force of all.